Hello everyone, Para here from the Paradox Brothers YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be making a video discussing soul control decks. So, the deck I have in front of you is the same deck that we had in a video recently of me playing with it on EDO Pro, and I'll just talk about this and then one other version of a soul control deck, and then that'll be pretty much the video. So to begin with, this deck was actually based off of an Italian-based player's deck. I cannot recall their name right now, but I'll link it in the description below, and you can actually find it on Format Library if you go and search soul control decks. So that deck list and this deck list are very, very similar. The key difference really is the Skilled Dark Magician. They played King Tiger Wengu. I play Skilled Dark Magician. I just didn't really think King Tiger really fit in this deck as well. I'm sure he probably explained it in the video, but I can't understand Italian, so I didn't understand his reasoning behind it. But I wanted to play Skilled Dark Magician because I wanted additional dark. I wanted something that couldn't be Tsukiyomi and ran over, and I like Skilled Dark Magician. Retrospectively, though, I think maybe like Archfiend Soldier might be even better, considering the fact that it's very similar stats and cannot. Unlike Skilled Dark Magician, who has 3 counters on him, your opponent mind controls him, or not mind control because you can't tribute, but brain controls or snatch deals. They can actually tribute off your Dark Magician and fail to find and get rid of him. You can't do that with Archfiend Soldier, obviously. So I think, by all accounts, Archfiend Soldier probably is actually a bit better in this particular deck. Anyway, this obviously uses BLS, but BLS is just kind of a card that is a really good card that you run into that you want to be able to support. It's not the main focus of the deck. Main focus, of course, are the tribute monsters. In this case, the 3 Thunder Dragon, 3 Blowback Dragon, 2 Zaborg, and then Soul Exchange. Soul Exchange is just like spot removal for face-down monsters or face-up monsters, and you can also use it in conjunction with Metamorphosis. But primarily, you're going to be using Soul Exchange in conjunction with Brain Control and Snatch Steal to tribute out to get these monsters out. And some things I'll note after playing this deck for a little while is that Zaborg in particular is a light monarch, which is the reason why he's in here. And he has a good effect, but particularly in Soul Exchange, I think it's a bit weaker than it would be in a traditional recruiter-based sort of monarch deck, because obviously it's much less likely your opponent will have 2 creatures out than 1. There were some times where I would summon Zaborg and I had to destroy one of my own scapegoats or something like that, just because I needed to get rid of one of their monsters and I needed to get field presence of some sort. So I think going on in the future, when I refine this deck and make a version 2, I will probably try to find a different card than Zaborg that I can still get some benefit off of. Or maybe I'll use 1 Zaborg and 1 something else. That being said, I like the way this deck plays actually a lot. The inclusion of Thunder Dragons makes this deck a lot more live most of the time. And I feel like it worked out really well. So hopefully you guys give it a try, and maybe you have success. You can make it better than what I did. And then, yeah, so that's that version. Let's move on to the one other version I have that I want to show at least. So this is something I haven't actually shown yet. And it obviously doesn't have any kind of chaos engine whatsoever. Instead, it's more of an earth-based engine with Thessalos and Blowback Dragon. So we have the 3 Berserk Gorilla, just to keep aggression up, 2 Blowback Dragon, just because this card is really, really good in Monarchs, because of the dark, 1200 defense, so it can't be ran over by Tsukiyomi, which is very important. And you have a probability of getting throughout the course of a duel, the longer this card stays in the field, the more potential you have to plus an advantage, because it could destroy cards every turn. Unlike a Monarch that only destroys the card upon summon. So I think this card is really, really good. In fact, I don't know, maybe even good enough to put another one in here and take out a different card or something. But this is all very experimental. 2 Gigantes just to keep up the pressure and field presence, and also to tribute him off for another Monarch. Very strong card. I will say one particular note is Gigantes and Royal Decree is kind of a tricky situation, because someone steals your Gigantes and destroys them by running them into one of your other Monarchs or something, and they destroys your Royal Decree. That sucks, so you want to watch out for that. This card right here is kind of what makes this deck, in my mind, very special. Is Gillosaurus. So as you can read, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, activate this effect. Your opponent can special summon one monster from their graveyard. So this is not mandatory, they can choose. Which means it's not a requirement for you to play this card. So you can special summon this on your first turn, and then tribute him off for a Thessalos, and immediately rip a card out of your opponent's hand. And then you have a card in the graveyard to banish for Gigantes or something like that, right? So there's a lot of cool things you could do with this card. There's even some variants I've done where I use, when I've used Last Will or something like that, but I'm still kind of working on those. I've seen other people use Last Will and Gilsource in a very similar way. I have Grandmark in here. I think these two monarchs are actually some of the strongest monarchs, despite what people think. So people think if it's not light or dark, it's immediately worse. And while that can be true if you're focusing on the chaos aspect, if you really don't care about the chaos monsters at all, the Grandmark and Thessalos are very, very good on their own because they have the highest likeliness of actually gaining some advantage consistently and being live, especially Thessalos, because your opponent usually will have at least one card in their hand, and Grandmark targets one set card on the field, regardless if it's a spell, trap, or monster. So this card's really good. It's not as good against if you're playing against a deck like Burn that has a bunch of chainable cards or floodgate cards or something like that, but that's when you go into the side deck and you put Mobius in instead. Mobius is not as good, I think, in the main deck just because you don't have that versatility. And maybe even a water-based Monarch deck, I would like the Cold Water Wave deck we featured on our channel not too long ago. You can go check out that video if you want to see a Cold Wave water-based deck. 3 brain control. This just makes your Monarchs much more viable. Also, it's good on its own as well because you can attack per game with it. And you can banish chaos monsters. You can use effects. It's really good. Creature swap, I think I might even put 2 creature swaps in this deck because the Gillosaurus works really, really well with it. You can special summon Gillosaurus. Drawing Gillosaurus late game, I was finding kind of sucked because your opponent could get their own monster back, right? And that was not good. So I was thinking of a way to make it not as bad to draw late. Because it's at 3 weeks, I want to draw it as fast as possible. Well, I thought Creature Swap would work really well with it because you special summon Gillosaurus and your opponent brings back a BLS, doesn't know you have a Creature Swap, you play it, and you get their nice monster, they take your Gillosaurus, and you're sitting in a pretty good position. Also, Creature Swap works really well with the scapegoats we have in here, so... And then, of course, Soul Exchange, which we went over before. It's good spot removal, allows you to summon a really strong boss monster. Also, keep in mind that each turn a Monarch is on the field, just in itself, because it's so strong, is another turn you can possibly go up an advantage by running over a monster, especially when you have Royal Decree in a deck that turns off their traps. So this deck can get out of hand for your opponent really, really quickly, like a lot of Monarch decks can. So. But yeah, at some point I'll refine this to a point where I'm very I'm happy with it, and I'll make a playthrough video, and you guys can see it in action. So that's it for the video, really. That's all I really wanted to talk about. I do think Soul Control decks are much better than people think. They have inherent issues, obviously. Breaking is a big one. Drawing into cards that just simply are not playable always is going to suck. And you have to play cards in this deck to kind of make that situation suck a lot less when that does happen. That's why we have the 3 brain controls, 3 soul exchanges, 3 scapegoats, to try to make unplayable hands usable. With any deck that requires 2 card combos or something, to that extent, you will always find yourself in situations where you feel like you just can't play. But you also run the gambit of, you potentially could just completely overpower your opponent very quickly. So hopefully you guys learned something from this video. We'll make videos similar to this in nature in the future. And yeah, we'll talk to you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.